Hello everyone, I'm from San Diego. Thank you, Mario, for the introduction. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk about mapping existing sensors to a standardized format, same topic as the previous talk. This is joint work with Chetan Verma, Balakrishnan Narayan Swami from UC San Diego, and Radha from Carnegie. Our building community has come up with a lot of innovative applications which make building more efficient, gives us more insights into what is going on in the buildings, occupancy detection, other personalized services which makes it much better. And all of these applications rely on combined building infrastructure to properly have some of the sensors and actuators that already exist. But every building is different. We saw that when Keynote talked, the heterogeneity of buildings is really hard to deal with. University building is very different from a shopping mall. And even within the university, there are all these different kinds of buildings, going from lecture hall to libraries. And these buildings have different equipment, vendor, institutions, and as we saw in the previous talk, there's a lot of opportunity because of how these buildings behave. So we need a common representation. All of the sensors, actuators, and configuration parameters are referred to as points in the industry. And different buildings have a different number of points. And the developer has to spend a lot of manual effort to map these different points to some kind of standard representation that he can use. And this effort gets repeated for every building, for every application. And our goal is to reduce that manual effort so that we can enable more building applications. This is the outline of my talk. And hopefully you can see that application portability is important. And we're talking more about what building aspects we use. There are 4 buildings that we have chosen, pretty much at random across 55 buildings we have access to. And they have a wide variety of uses. Some are biomedical laboratory offices, and some are normal student and faculty offices, and some are libraries. And they have different ages, different sizes. They all serve one single vendor. All of the buildings in our university are served by tons of controls. Though they do have equipment, specific equipment like computer room air conditioning, different. All of these points, about 20,000 of them, above these 4 buildings, we enable and manually take that as granted for our further experiments. When we are talking about creating a standard ontology, there's a lot of challenges that comes with it, and we need to know what the type of point is, what the location of the point, what is the equipment to which the point is associated with. How do these different points relate to each other? What happens when a single control input is here, and how do these points behave? And in this work, we're going to focus on just trying to define the type of the point, the risks that we need to consider. Give you an example of how much heterogeneity exists. Some sort of examples again, taking the zone temperature, it just seems to be a popular point to examine and easy to understand. They could have very different features, and the leftmost name here is the vendor given name, which has this cryptic aggregations, and there is a description which is more human readable. Again, these are meant to be read by the building operators, not by the machine. And then there are points which look very, very similar to each other, but they are actually of different type. And their inconsistencies introduced because there are manual entries, building operators write additional nodes, and when the terminologies are different across different kinds of buildings. So let's look at how regular expressions can be used to map all of these heterogeneity in some standard format. Regular expressions are hard to formulate because of all the inconsistencies that are present. And to give you an example, after I take the description field and already take out all the different special characters and all that's the case and whatnot, I still have a lot of heterogeneity information. And here is a short form of zone count vendors that have typographical errors, there are alternating names, and there is additional information about what room it exists in, and more importantly, it's different from the census zone count. And sometimes there are no descriptions, it's just blank, and we have to look at when they give a name and figure out where to partition it. Get an abbreviation which actually stands for what is a language. So, to make regular expressions really, really accurate, we rely on doing exact matches. So, all of these 5 entries of description, that's 5 units in the bucket. We did this for all the 4 domains, and again, not analyzing the metadata, making sure that the numbers, no special characters, carefully lookup table. This is what we get for one of the buildings. This building has about 3,200 points, and it takes 250 manual labels to label all the points. You see the progression with the number of manual labels present. So there's still a lot of manual effort, and this is the effort that we're trying to reduce in this program. So we present Zodiac, which consists of all these different subparts that I introduced you to. But the goal is to reduce that programmer effort, which requires not only knowing the line pipeline, there's a lot of domains within embedded and the program expert users have a hard to get expertise. And we want a systematic way of exploiting any of the information that will be available. Units, the floating, whether it's a floating point or it's a Boolean point. And for this, we are using machine learning approach to address this problem. To give you an example of how we extract features from the data, this is an example string for Reddit domain. We first tokenize it and separate it into back and forwards. We remove all the numbers because they do not give any information on what the type of the point is. And then we add in all of the extra metadata that we might have, in our case units, the type of its input or output, what type of data type it is, and then we vectorize that in one feature set. Next, we do hierarchical clustering, which is also called environmental clustering. What it does is it takes 2 points which are very close to each other by some distance metric and puts them together. And we tried with a bunch of different distance metrics and it's similar line. This is an example clustering that's happening for 20 different points in our building. And as you can see, the points which are very, very close to each other get clustered together first, and then the clusters which look similar get together next, and so on and so forth, and all of them form one block, single block. Now, if you have an appropriate threshold that cuts off this figure called dendrogram, then we get individual clusters which are on the same time. However, if this threshold is incorrect, then you have problems. The last 2 types, the pooling set points will get bunched together because they are very close to each other. So this threshold becomes important. When we look at the dendrogram at a larger scale, like 1,000 points or 10,000 points, this is what it looks like. And visually, there are only 2 or 3 points which make sense to obtain accurate clusters, where each cluster consists of the same point. And we just did this empirically because there were 2 or 3 options, and then this is because all of our buildings have the same memory and similar structure, the same threshold works for all different problems. So what does hierarchical clustering give us? This kind of figurative explanation. Then the blue box represents all of the points that exist in the building. The dark green circles are the points which are clustered by the point types. And the light green circles are what we get from hierarchical clusters. And in a sense, we're getting multiple clusters for the same point type. And this is done very nicely by this algorithm, and we get 98% accuracy across all the buildings. So looking at the individual buildings, they all have different number of points and point types. And individual clusters we operate with something like this. So instead of labeling 3,200 points, we have now reduced the problem to 300 clusters, because each of those clusters have the same point type. We need to label one of these and they get propagated across the cluster. Now, if I could potentially exploit regular expression information if it's available. So if I do that, well, one thing I forgot to mention was the clusters that we obtain is not proportional to the number of point types. So the hierarchical clustering is able to capture the underlying point types in that exist. If I use regular expression to the main context, like a description, a special field, or how to obtain the abbreviation, then I can further fuse clusters which are of the same type, and I get fewer clusters than before. For example, for Bonner Hall, the number of clusters go from 300 to 1. Now, to label all of these, I just need one example from each of these clusters. So the number of examples I need are equal to the number of clusters. But to generalize this, I need a model. If I label new points, I need to know what would be, a way to predict what would be the type of that. And we use supervised classifier for that. And these might need multiple examples for the same cluster in order to be accurate. However, these are 2 examples, and that's why we go into active learning methods and how see whether that will work for us. So how does active learning work? We take a random cluster and ask the domain expert for the label. This is used to train a supervised classifier, and in our case, it's a random forest classifier. And then that model labels other similar clusters which have not been asked for examples if the confidence of prediction is high. If the confidence of prediction is low, we ask the domain expert, okay, can you please give an example? And then we iterate on this process and then all the responses are done. So this is what active learning looks for one and all again, and we need 245 examples and there's very high accuracy. Comparing this to the regular expressions we saw earlier, it has 215 examples to ensure 100% accuracy. So you can see how the active learning method is performing almost the same or similar, but it does not require any of the underlying information such as where is the abbreviation located or what the description carries some special significance, etc. Now, if we use those regular expression-based clusters and use information that is done by that is incorporated in regular expressions, we can further reduce the number of labels to 181. And this tells us that learning that's done by hierarchical clustering is very different from learning that's done by regular expressions, and this can be reduced to reduce the number of manual examples we asked from learning experience. Across all buildings, our average accuracy is 98%, and we are able to reduce the number of examples needed by 28%. So let's see if we can learn across buildings, the point that was raised last time. So by learning across one building to another, what I mean is if we have ground truth labels for one building, can I use that to label the other building somehow? And in particular, what we do is we do the same feature extraction and clustering. But our active learning classifier is now beginning with the ground truth labels that's already available from the existing building and start with the new building. And this is what that looks like. We have our number of manual labels has reduced from 245 to 173, and accuracy has remained high. So our active learning algorithm is able to maintain that accuracy even though there's inconsistencies across two different buildings. When you compare this to regular expressions, surprisingly, they also perform in a this very similar metric, 76 examples and high accuracy. So transfer learning is possible, but we probably need the algorithms to exploit this further and make the learning faster or better. Now, can we exploit time series data that exists from these sensors to be We start with simple supervised learning, again, random chance classifier, to see if data actually helps or not. And we have a number of database features, simple ones like mean and max. Then we have pattern-based features, with Fourier spectrum and hardware transforms. And shape-based feature, which captures the high-level modulations of the signal. And then there are texture-based features, which capture the noisy of the signal. And result looks something like this. And you can see using only data does not actually give us very good results. And this is because there are lots of different configuration points which almost never change. And there are lots of different sensors which look very, very close to each other. So and the text is like outperforming data by a extent. But if you combine them, they actually learn different aspects about the sensors and it's able to boost the accuracy. Now, if we try to apply these same data features to an active learning, this is what we get. We take 216 examples, again, very high accuracy. Comparing this to our simple active learning, just the next, the database features did not help us that much. The number of examples actually increased a little bit, and accuracy dipped a little bit. And this is our hypothesis is confounding the random forest classifier to reduce the threshold that we use and that's leading to more number of examples being needed. We need better algorithms that will exploit that data features that are pointed out in this slide, and we need that. Comparing this to Reusable, there are 5 different papers and 4 of them are on this conference. I'll probably talk about his work as skip over the detailed explanation. Human apologies was a demo last year. use dictionary mapping like Z and T corresponds to zone temperature, and that dictionary mapping was then used to map all the sensors. Hawk et al. Used a very similar metric like what we're doing, clustering and active learning, and their results are also quite similar. Again, another paper from Hawk et al. Where they focus just on the data and the transfer learning from one learning to another. And then there is Gao, who's on top next actually. And they are also focusing on understanding data features. And they do multi-level classification where zone temperature is divided into zone and temperature, and they have to label those. So how does our work any different? We actually look at all the point types, and some of those work did not cover all the point types. And this is kind of hard to foresee because when I'm looking at a new building, I don't know which point type to classify. It's something like an active learning that I don't know what's going to is needed. We also use additional metadata. It's available, right? It's a data type. I was surprised that none of the other work actually don't exploit this. So, but it's been useful for us and to separate. We get really high accuracies for our vendors that we use. And one possible thing that explains that is that we are having one vendor and one solution. And this will be one way. High accuracy. But looking at all the different namings, you know that each across different kinds of buildings that I look at. There's you see a Rochester naming schema is very similar. Some of the buildings that we see already also has similar naming schema. And back in today, the paper in National Journal which proposed a very similar naming schema is used in our buildings. So in conclusion, building data is heterogeneous. They need sample interpretation for application availability. And regex gives you some extent, but requires significant amount of domain expertise and programmer expertise. Zodiac gives you some of the way. It uses hierarchical clustering and gives 98% accuracy for the clustering of similar point types. And active learning labels all those different clusters with 98% accuracy again, and reduces the number of labels needed compared to regex by 20%. Time-series data learning is useful, and we saw that with supervised learning it does boost the data, it just boosts that learning that is needed, but it doesn't work well with our active learning algorithm, so it So in the big picture, like I pointed out, there are many different things. Point type is just one of them. We have integrates to the stack, but there's one location, different type, relationship between points, and etc. So to enable this and for this community, this channel, we're open sourcing all the metadata that we have across 200,000 points, more than 55 buildings on our campus, and the whole community exploits the information available. Thank you.